Folks, welcome back. My name is Rudy. You're watching Alpha Investments. Today, we're having a conversation regarding fees and liquidity. That is the interesting topic that I've been wanting to have a good financial discussion with all of you all. Just doing a little end of the month inventory over here. Making sure no boxes are missing, nothing's been moved, and making sure all the numbers add up. And they do. Okay. There's general consensus in the collectible card world and most collectibles, even video games, trading cards, comic books, coins, stamp collecting, blow-up doll collecting, vibrating things, suction cup industries. People have a general consensus that even if your investment or collectible or your collection goes up or down, it's difficult to sell it. And also, you have to factor in fees. I did the bunny ear, so you know I'm serious in this video. And there is truth to that. That's not lies. That's not Timmy mindset. Those are facts. Anytime you sell any form of individual card, like for example, here, over here, I got a stack of leftover core 2012. I got a stack of 150 ponders. I guess that should just be buy listed and turn into a reserve list card or something. I don't know why that's even there. Okay. It's been there for years. When you sell something on eBay or TCG Player, it's accepted that you're going to pay the 12-13%, right? The selling fee commission, the commissions, and the 3% payment processing. Do we all agree? Okay. Now, you'll probably have another $5-10 for shipping, but let's just keep it simple. When you buy or sell real estate, you have closing costs, appraisals, underwriting, different bank fees and amortization costs between property taxes, insurance, and obviously all these little foo-foo Pac-Men, as I used to call them. And not to mention that if you're selling a house or buying, you could be paying or splitting a realtor commission, which could be 5-6%. So divided by 2, you're paying 2-3% in a realtor commission plus actual closing costs. Most people buy and sell real estate with a loan. So closing costs or doc stamps and different things are usually a pretty hefty price, usually at least like maybe 1-2% of the loan size. So let's say we're going to close on a $500,000. Rudy's going to buy this new $500,000 house and use it as a rental house. Well, if I'm using a bank and I put my normal 10% down or 20% down or 3% down or whatever you're going to do, just to close on that property, it's probably going to cost me $5,000-$10,000 in costs, 2% fee. Now, if I go to sell that, if I use a Zillow, an Open Door, an OfferPad, any of these Wall Street firms, or We Buy Your House, because we blow up your phone, they're going to offer usually about 10-15% under market. And but they make it easy for you. If you hire a realtor and you try to get full market price of $500,000 for a property that you're selling, the realtor is usually going to take 5-6%. In real estate, it's kind of generally accepted that those are just the fees. Nobody really says, there's no real estate gurus. I don't you guys love the internet guru who's going to sell you a CD or some program on real estate and how to make all these millions and always use the bank's money, never use your own money. They're all going to, but you never hear anybody saying, well, don't buy or sell or rent out real estate or fix up homes because of transaction costs or commissions. That's not really a big thing that a bunch of YouTube channels focus on and all the gurus of real estate. They more focus on the same thing we talk about on this channel with collectibles, and that is long-term, the potential of buying a $500,000 property, having tenants rent the house, and 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, chances are that $500,000 house is going to double to $1 million in 10, 15 years, and hopefully you can pay a little extra principal if you have a mortgage, and you can pay off the loan. So in 15 years, you have a house for $500,000 that's worth $1 million, and hopefully your tenant paid off your house, or maybe you put some extra money to accelerate the mortgage or whatever. But, the commissions and the fees and transaction costs, the collectible world, and see, I hate to say it this way, and I know how a lot of you all feel. A lot of people believe that since there's so many younger or maybe Timmies in the collectible world of video games and cards, that they just don't grasp the concept of fees or commissions or costs of doing business. In restaurants, in real estate, in retail, it's just, the age-old saying for the last 100 years, or since the 40s and 30s and 20s and 50s, and was, well, that's just the cost of doing business. If you have a restaurant, the health inspector, or maybe the fire codes, or the annual expenses, the taxes, the quarterly, tax payments. And these are all just part of doing business. But it's very bizarre that we run into now, we go into that collectible niche market, and suddenly it gets really weird again. The emotions get higher, the customers get more aggressive, people love and hate certain stores and people in the industry. It gets more polarizing. We don't see as much of that, in real estate or in other industries or sectors. I'm just picking on real estate right now. But there's really not much difference, is what I'm getting at. It's kind of, I'm not sure if it's just deliberate, or I don't know if just a lot of younger people who are flipping, kind of penny cards or specking on a bunch of $5 cards, hoping they go to 10 or 20 and they make a couple $100 or $20, or I don't know if just a lot of individuals like this haven't kind of participated in maybe some other hobbies or big boy sports or maybe real big money investments, or just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm speculating, everybody. So what I'm getting at is I don't really understand why people put so much emphasis in negative spin and try to talk other people out of collectibles because of selling commissions. Yes, if you build your own website, or you are a YouTuber like me, or build your own platform and build your own large Patreon account, or you have your own store with your own private website, yeah, you can list and sell your own things without paying the eBay TCG player fees, and you just pay the 3% credit card fees. Yeah. So you can cut it down from 13% fees to just 3%. So you can increase your margins by 10%, but then you have to do substantial other work and build a business, build a customer base, then build a website, you have to do other things that take time and money to get to a point to even be able to move that commission and kind of do that. But it's all about the same. So let's go to the next part of this video. Well, Rudy, what about the stock market? Everything's zero fees, zero commissions, the Robinhood era, and every brokerage firm from the Banks of Americas and the Chases and the TD Banks and the Schwabs and T. Rowe's, and they don't charge any fees anymore. So how do you explain and how do you want to address that? Well, my perspective on that is a little bit different, and I'm going to be very cautious on my word choice. Because first of all, everyone's taxes are very different. But mostly when it comes to Wall Street and registered and regulated investments, I'm going to say the biggest number one difference is going to be taxes and tax rates. Now, legally, I cannot get deep into a conversation with taxes because you all listening live all over the world and all in different areas, states and countries and jurisdictions. So your tax codes, tax laws are so different, there's no way for me to navigate a conversation on taxes that will apply to everybody listening where it'll make sense. So it just doesn't make sense to talk about it because one person will say, I agree, that works for me. Then everybody else's, none of that makes sense. So taxes is something that is just a landmine, minefield disaster to talk about. But the overall response I want to lay out there is tax rates for interest income on Wall Street, whether it's bond interest payments or interest in a 5% high yield savings account, tend to be a higher interest rate than if you're self-employed or you're running an LLC or a Schedule C sole proprietorship or whatever you're doing. Usually the profits, the taxes, the expenses, the effective tax rate will usually be a lot lower, but you really can't do much. Like if I put $1 million into a 5% account, it's going to pay me $50,000 a year for doing nothing. Now that $50,000 a year, I'm going to have to pay some hefty taxes on that $50K. There's no way around that. I cannot deduct that $50K of interest income. I can't just say, well, commuting, mileage from my vehicle, work from home, office. You can't do it. If you have $1 million making 5%, they give you $50,000 in interest for the year. You're gonna have to pay taxes on the $50,000. Okay, and like I said, I'm not going to go deep into the short-term, long-term capital gains, the ordinary income, the different tax rates, and what bracket. If you're lower income, you get lower tax rates, and long-term versus the evil short-term flipping tax rate. But overall, what you all need to understand is 99%, at least this is Rudy's speculative opinion, most LGSs and people selling collectibles and buying and selling from backpack dealers and going to big events and Pro Tours, Grand Prix and callings and Pokemons and Magics, these people buying and selling cards with friends and groups and vendors are not creating tax forms and mailing in and taking pictures that they bought a $10 card and they sold it to a guy with a backpack in the hallway eating a hot dog for $100 and they made $90 profit and they're going to self-report themselves. The average person is not going to do that. It's always been that way. I don't think it's ever going to change. Now, the big boys and the big companies are people who handle a lot. The people like the evil Rudys and the big moon cities and castle kingdoms. These big companies, all of us, we don't have a choice. Okay? When my PayPal shows, 20 or $25 million cash flow flowed through and it's got my information on it, I have to put that on the tax return. Because if I don't, I guarantee you with 100% certainty, I would get a phone call or a message or I guess a certified letter or someone knocking at the door. So on the big scale, all of that's always happened. But again, focusing on normal people, I think the biggest difference when it comes to Wall Street with stocks and bonds and interest and capital gains versus collectibles, your biggest difference as people focus on their 13% commissions selling on eBay is probably going to be the tax rate difference. For, if a normal person has to pay, let's say 20, 30, even 39% federal tax rate in the United States, a 39% tax rate, assuming you don't have local, state taxes and state income and different things, like if you're in New York and other places, California, and you have to pay higher fees, then it could be up to the 50, 55, 57% tax rate, depending where you are in the U.S. And that is a very substantial amount of money, and it's a very big conversation. Now, of course, Rudy's in the infamous state of Florida, and Rudy's never going to leave the infamous state of Florida, so I'm going to leave that there because we don't have state taxes in state. I don't have to pay the state of Florida a state income tax. We don't have a North Florida, a Jacksonville, a St. Augustine, Tallahassee, Orlando. We don't have a city state income tax. We just have to pay federal taxes. So, what I'm getting at is no matter which category you're in, I can build a case in context and strip things and make narratives to try to teach or tell you all or preach to you all that you should never do real estate because you got closing costs, you got appraisals, you got insurance, you got taxes, you got repairs, you got all kinds of liability you got to do. Then whenever you buy and sell real estate, then you got to repay the fees. And if you got to hire a realtor or sell through a company, then you got to pay another commissions. That's always been that way. There's no way around that. Unless you put a for sale sign up front and then the hot chick walking a dog goes, I've always wanted to buy that house. Here's a block of money, sign the deed over, and you don't have to pay any fees. And it's like, which I guess if you can pull that off, congratulations. But it is generally accepted that these normal 5 to 10% commissions and fees on many things is pretty normal in most industries. And I've always been baffled and fascinated by the strange angle of the evil of eBay and TCG Player. They run these multi-billion-dollar monstrous platforms, and, they provide the traffic and the eyeballs for you to try to make it easier to sell your product. And because of that, they have a lot of labor, overhead, liability, and costs. And yes, they make a lot of profit, and it's okay for evil, eBay, the evil bay, and TCG Player to make money. There's nothing wrong with these companies. That's why they do it. That's the point of a company, is to do something or manufacture something or service something, and hopefully they can turn a profit after running that machine. So, yeah, that is that whole part of the conversation. I'm not really sure why people are so honed in as that is the bad thing. It's kind of funny because, then if we shift a little to the liquidity conversation, there's been times in bad economic markets where houses have sat on the market unsold for weeks, months, and even 1 to 2 years. And yet when people say, Rudy, I've had this box of cards on eBay. It's been listed for 2 months. I can't even sell. There's no liquidity. I'm like, well, again, if you lower the price, I'm sure you increase the probability of sale. So then, just like real estate or anything else, depending on the price point you set is going to dictate how fast you sell. And obviously, the more time and patience you have, you can slide to the other end of the teeter-totter and you can leave a higher asking price. And that's the way it works. If you're, I tell them the same thing. If you're willing to take 6 months, you can break apart any Magic collection. And if you input a lot of time and a lot of patience, you will yield a higher amount than the quick fire sale to an evil company or to evil Rudy who pays you, well, 1 penny on the dollar, whatever it is. There's no difference. It's a sliding scale of depending on what you want to do. If you want to trade some of that money for and input a bunch of your time, you will make more money. If you want to say, I'm not inputting my time, it's worth more than trying to get another 10%, then you contact a dealer or you just dump it all online or whatever it is. That doesn't make the store evil. That doesn't make eBay evil. I can't believe I'm defending eBay. It doesn't make the counterparty like bad. And again, it goes back to that very bizarre cultural thing we have going on about the whole kind of the game piece. I want everything cheap, blah, 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 versus the whole money and business. We continue in this new era, especially post-COVID. It is a major tug of war of the haves and have-nots, the money, the business, remember, don't forget the word scalping. We haven't used that in a while. But when prices tank and stores lose tons of money and customers lose tons of money and investors and collectors lose tons of money, Karlov Manor, and distributors, everybody loses money, that game piece army mentality gets very quiet because now everybody's losing money and they almost feel good that bad things happen to other companies or people. And I'm not sure how the brain works or what's attracted to that drama, but that's just kind of how it is, So, anyways, but just to swap back one more time to the stock stuff, like stocks and bonds. The biggest difference is usually tax rates in effective versus gross tax rates when it comes to side hustles of business and deductions and things versus, actual capital gains, short and long, and ordinary income, all that stuff. So that's usually the biggest. Now, again, even someone who makes $10 selling to their neighbor is supposed to report to the IRS of what they do. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, in my experience in this industry, most smaller people don't do that kind of stuff. Now, does that change in the future? And they lower the thresholds of tax forms, the 1099s and everything? Maybe it shifts and they clamp down on going after the low income and the smaller fish. I'm not sure. It seems like the government wants to go in that path, which is, I guess, because they need money for all their government waste and goofy stuff. I don't understand the concept of trying to target the lowest kind of entry-level, lower income kind of slice segment of society. I'm a little confused on how everyone's okay with the concept that we should go after them to squeeze them for the most money. But that's just the world we live in. That's a complicated thing I'm not going into. So the point is, commissions and all this stuff has always been around. Every category is going to have some degree of it. Even if you flip a stock and you make $1 million and you got to lose half of it to taxes, versus you're flipping cards and maybe you just got a 13% commission and maybe you do the right thing and you got a business and you pay 20% taxes. You still come out ahead compared to the 50% short-term capital. There's so many ways to swing it, but it's so bizarre to me how people who are pro or con something don't acknowledge the full scope of the conversation. And it's a really strange thing to me. I don't know why that is. I think it's something to do, again, Rudy speculation, it's something to do with maybe the whole internet. The internet and social media and like the karmas and the thumbs up and the followers is such a powerful motivator. And a lot of the younger generation and individuals are so fixated on the concept about followers, growth, eyeballs, the views, how many, the karma points and the smileys and the thumbs up and the retweets, or the hearts, is that a like? Or the likes, the hearts? I don't, that means so much to some people because that is kind of their feedback loop of they're doing something right, or it makes them feel a part of something, or maybe the rest of their life sucks and they're going through stuff and certain things kind of give them to be a part of. There's a lot of complicated layers to that. But in the grand scheme of things, like I always talk to you guys about, we don't know yet. See, that's something. And I know now we're kind of drifting, but we don't know the long-term impact of all of these concepts. Okay? We don't know the long-term impact of all of us who've been a part of this social media, YouTube, Instagrams, and Twitters, and Facebooks, and MySpace. Like, what happens in another 40, 50 years from now? When people who grew up and started with this, like, what happens to all these individuals who maybe spent almost, the majority, hours of every day of their life on these platforms, posting hundreds of thousands and millions of tweets or messages on Facebook. Here I am going to Walmart. I bought a loaf of bread. And these people, like, what happens when all these individuals are 70 or 80 and you look back and you go, I spent 2 hours of every one of my days swiping on TikTok or YouTube Shorts. How much of my life did I wait? Like, are people ever going to realize the impact of the time they're trading into these companies? And, again, that goes back to commissions and all these things. The fees and commissions that these online platforms are charging us is because that, they provide the eyeballs and they provide the traffic. That's really all it comes down to. And I don't agree with the principle of people bashing all collectibles because you have a 13% or a 10% commission and a 3% payment processing. I don't think that is a good enough justifiable reason of why, all of this, everything around me is a heavy bag joke. It's the same thing when people say, Rudy, why do you do real estate also? The fees and the taxes and the insurance and the carrying costs, the repairs. Then if you ever sell it, you got to pay commissions and that's part of it. Rudy, why do you buy a bunch of dividend stocks and they pay you interest? And you talk about how I know you got your whatever 10,000 whatever shares of Hasbro, and and you've lost your butt on it. And yeah, I'm down, I don't know, 10-20%. But I mean, well, maybe I guess if you count the dividends, I'm not. Whatever. And but still, well, Rudy, you always talk about the 5% or 6% dividend yield to Hasbro, even though it's a crap stock. Well, I agree, but at the same time, when I get those dividend chunks, I still have to pay taxes on that. Even though I'm losing my ass on the stock price being down, when I get those interest payments, I still have to pay taxes on those payouts. When those things hit the account, that is a taxable event. So, I'm not sure. And maybe a lot of people in the industry are aware of this. And maybe it's just a cool thing to kind of go on these websites where, a lot of the education and people are just lacking because it just kind of, you feel like the in crowd. And everybody always wants to feel like the cool kid, right? Isn't that the idea? Is you want to feel like the cool kid. Rudy's not the cool kid. I can't have sponsorships. Hasbro and Wizards, I'm probably like the devil. I've never worked with them. They're never going to do anything for me. You can't even put the word Rudy on the main Magic Reddit without getting banned or kicked off. I mean, I've never been a part of the cool kids. I've always been an outlier and an outsider my whole life. So maybe a lot of people feel the same way. And doing certain things and kind of jumping on those bandwagons, it makes you feel a part of something. And feeling a part of something is kind of an important thing in a world where a lot of people are depressed and lonely because there's a lot of problems. And I guess I can't blame a lot of people for feeling that way because, shit, the world's a mess. And the more news and the more media and the more stuff you follow on your phone, the more you're probably going to be more depressed and more miserable because it's awful. So that's the Rudy speech on the commissions and liquidity thing. Everything, depending on the price and depending on the item, has a certain degree of liquidity. The lower the price is, the more liquidity you have. Sometimes, just like real estate, just like 2008, just like 2020, before everything went crazy, you can have real estate that's illiquid. You can have magic cards that could sit on eBay for a year. And, if you're not willing to lower the price, it's probably going to sit a long time. Either A, it just doesn't sell, or B, you have to wait months to years for that price to go up so that your price is no longer overpriced. Or you got to wait for better economic conditions where there's more customers and people have more spending and purchasing power. It's, that's just kind of the way everything is. And I don't think that's an excuse to not be a part of something fun like the collectible card world. This hobby is a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing. There's so many variables and forces at work and people involved. It truly is an amazing, beautiful thing that was created by us humans. And as long as you look at it with the right perspective, it's a really fun thing to be a part of. And you have to kind of look through a lot of the muck, the mud, and the bad stuff. But it's a really amazing thing that, let's go back to my ponder. These silly little cards that are just, again, cardboard with ink, game pieces, have built an entire subculture, economy, markets, and everything. It's an amazing thing when you really step back and think about it. The ability for something that never existed before the 90s created this game, which expanded to a cultural phenomena. And it's this huge thing. And now you've got all these layers of people, players, collectors, investors, stores, distributors, ecosystems, Wall Street, stocks, single cards, sealed products, out of print, new stuff, reprint, all these different variants. It is truly a wild thing. If you calm down and step back and look at it, it's an amazing thing to think about some of the stuff in this world. That's all I got, folks. Hope you learned something. Don't let liquidity and don't let the fear of having to pay a fee, don't let things like that kind of stop you from trying things in your life. I think that's probably my takeaway. Don't not sell on Amazon. Don't not sell on TCG Player. Don't avoid eBay because they all charge fees. If you've always been curious, try it. Give things a fair chance. Don't be like, oh, I sold one thing and the customer returned it and I hate it. Everything's a scam. Don't be a Timmy about it. Give things real chances. Put real effort into it. Did you try it for what? A day? A week? A month? They always say, it takes 5 to 10 years of daily effort, in my opinion, to become truly a master or professional at something. If you have not done something every day for 5 to 10 years, I'm not going to consider you someone who's like a master in their field. Now, if you've been a doctor, an engineer, or you've built, alien spaceships for the government, I know you're out there, and you've been doing it for 15, 20 years, dude, that's, you've seen some things. So, I think that's my speech, folks. I don't know, cheesy cliche, never give up. I don't know. People are always going to say you're full of crap and always going to want you to fail. And, thanks for watching. Rudy's Penis.